Good day, everyone. Good morning. I am Farnaz Baksh, and like our chair said, I'm a first year PhD student here at the University of Tartu. And for the next few minutes, I'll give you an insight into my research into something called social educational robots, and a bit about our recent publication using this participatory design method, which some of you might be familiar with, to how to create, using this method to create these types of robots. My co-authors are Mateusz, who is also a junior research fellow here at the University of Tartu, and my supervisor and professor, Professor Carl. So traditionally, some of you might know that robots are being used in factories. There's giant robotic arms that's used for pick and place, and robots were created to be as tools to assist us in large tasks. But on another side of the spectrum, there's something called social robots. And social robots are created, they're being researched and developed to help people as something called as capable partners. They're being used in entertainment, in healthcare, and in education. And these types of robots, they're designed and researched to be perceived as trusting, as helpful to us, as reliable, and as engaging. I'm particularly interested in these types of robots, social robots, for research and education. And you can find these types of robots in various categories. One of them is the use of these robots as language tutors or language learners. Here is Sophie, a furball robot that was developed by MIT to teach the French language with this tablet-like interface. This duck-like robot, it's a dancing robot by Japan, and here this experiment is showing that the robot can help students solve learning puzzles. And this experiment is quite interesting because many people might say, well, why a robot and not just your computer? But this experiment here this paper found that the physical presence of a robot help increase students' cognitive learning gain because they actually have a physical presence here compared to a virtual presence. So there's a lot of research in this comparing virtual and physical presence of robots. Robots are being used for gamification, to create educational games, to make learning more fun, for socialization and collaboration, and to help children with special needs. So this QT robot here, you can see, it's actually helping kids with autism, lots of research in that field. And this is another humanoid robot called Abby, and it's used to help children with math and English and so on. These are the types of robots that I'm particularly interested in for my target group, university students. And these are some famous desktop robots. It's being used in research and education. It has various modalities meaning your ways of interacting with it, such as sounds, such as it can recognize your facial expression. It has LEDs, there is display, and so on. And these types of robots, well, many of them are very expensive, like $2,000 plus euros. Some of them are not even for sale, like Haru was developed by Hunter Robotics, and it's only for research, you can't really purchase it. Moxie is being sold only in the US, so it cannot work outside of that region. So these are desktops robots. They are either, as you can see, like 30 cm tall, so they fit on the desktops, or as small as 20 cm. But what is the problem? There's all of these different types of robots. Well, what's the problem? Why am I doing a PhD in this field? Well, I found, after studying the literature, there seems to be a lack of something called open source affordable robots, tailored for university students, because as you can see, most of these robots, they were designed for children. There's not much robots out there for university students. And this presents a gap in the field of HRI, which I am currently interested in pursuing. My interest started during my bachelor year. Even though I've been living in Estonia for 3 years, I'm originally from Guyana, University of Guyana in South America. And it was during my final bachelor thesis year that I was trying to learn how can machines understand human emotions. And it was both fortunate and unfortunate 2020 when COVID hit, and all students were isolated. And I found that being isolated, I was unmotivated to study, I was unmotivated to even write my thesis. And it was around then, I had my idea journal book, and I wrote that what if students had their own personal study companion to help motivate them, to help them whilst they study. And I wrote down that idea, and thankfully, when I came here, last year I was able to create the first prototype, the first literature-backed prototype for a robotic study companion for university students. This is the prototype that I'm gonna further explain. Well, what is it? It can be within its name. It's a desktop robot. It is about 11 centimeter tall, so it fits in your hand. Its weight, it's very light, around 380 grams. But the idea is that this affordable, it's open source, so other people around the world can replicate it. It interacts with me, with students, whilst we're studying, whilst we're learning, and it helps to keep us motivated. It helps to keep us engaged in our study. It helps to give us reminders. And the prototype, well, it's still a work in progress. It's part of my PhD. But the primary mode of interaction for this desktop robot is speech. It currently uses OpenAI. Well, last year when we were developing, we used OpenAI API, so very large language model. And you communicate with it. It has a microphone. It replies to us via speaker. There's a touch display for displaying information that you can interact with it. There's a button that you can press to activate. The button is also there for privacy. There's no camera because a lot of papers said camera helps with privacy, right? Students don't want your camera to be looking at them all the time or to be listening to them all the time. That's why there's a button. And then there's flippers that waves and tell you hi. So there's a lot of mode of interaction for this affordable €250 robot. And well, this robot, when I was doing my master thesis, I did a lot of rich literature. I studied teachers and student perspective. What does university students and teachers want for a social educational desktop robot? And it's paper like this. This is a German study in 2020 where they interview over 116 university undergrad students. And they found that students want to interact with the robot primarily via speech, then by touch, have gestures. The university students want machine-like interface, and university students want their robot to be able to motivate them, adapt to individual learning style, not behave like human because there's something called the uncanny valley in robotics. And of course, privacy and ease of handling is also mentioned. So this is the design process for my robots. I study existing solution, like those desktop solution that I showed you, where I found like there's a lot of curves, there's a lot of neutral colors, and all these different types of features. I went through my concept brainstorming. I choose affordable parts. So we have the main processing is called a Raspberry Pi, which is, you can get it all over the world when there's no shortage. So it uses a Raspberry Pi, it uses affordable parts. And then after a lot of iteration and wiring mess, we came up with this idea of the RSC, which is a working prototype, and it's open source. All the files is available online. Students around the world can go 3D print their own, and they can purchase the part and replicate and build their own. The software is, like I said, we've used OpenAI API, but we want to go away from that because of privacy now. And it's Python, so it's easy replicatable. But I found that robot, I did literature review, yes, but then cultures are different, right? So I might like something, but some other student might have another idea of what their robot can be. So that's the idea. This is one aspect of my PhD research. It's called cross-culture. So how does a student in Japan versus a student in Estonia versus a student where I'm from, do they want to interact with this robot via speech alone? Or do they want some other modalities? So luckily I finally visited home in February. We're from at the University of Vienna, where I was supervising and mentoring students there. And I thought about running a workshop. I decided to run a short participatory workshop for a day, introduce students to social robots, introduce them to HRI, and really understand what are their preference. Like, are their preference different from mine? And so we aim to understand, to how students would perceive what are their preferences for robotic study companions, and to expose them to these other state-of-the-art robots out there. And we came up with 3 research questions. We want to know what are the features they want, do they have ethical and social concerns, and after I expose them to all of these different type of robots, would they prefer one of that, or would they still hold on to their design? So I was interested in these 3 questions for for this workshop that we did, this participatory workshop. So my co-author and I, we planned it. We were like, okay, we have about less than 2 hours. We're going to do a brief overview. So it was a classroom just like this. We had 20 students. And we were like, okay, this is what human-robot interaction is. We briefly introduce it, and then we hand them papers and pens, just like this. I should have brought some papers and pen for you guys. And we told them, sketch your ideal study companion. Tell me what features and what social, ethical, and it was like this, a one-slide thing where we just had this, and we told them, put your drawing here, list some features that you like there, and list at least one potential social and ethical issues. And after they sketched it, we asked them to present it to us, and we did our seminar presentation where, just like all those types of different robots, I was like, these are the existing field, this is what's out there, this is how it's being used, this is my prototype. And after I introduced them to the state of the art, I asked them, now go back to your sketches and see if you can see if you want to make any changes so I can get an answer to my final question. And then we just asked them to present again. So for the data analysis, remember we have a list of features here on these types of social robots. Just briefly, we use this paper by Mahdi. It's a review paper. And this review paper, they examine over 344 different types of social robots. And they have a very large database of the different types of categories, which are interaction modality. So for a robot, you can have different movements. You can have touchscreen. It might be speech, sound, and light, and so on. Mobility, a robot can move, or it can stay in one spot, or it doesn't move at all. Manipulator type, so you can do gestures, or you can actually do a function. Embodiment, so how does it look? Does it look humanoid like us? Does it look animal, or does it not take the shape of anything? Then shell, so is it hard or soft or furry shell? And then face type, yes or no. So these are how we group the categories of the list of features that students give us. And our results, well, each student, some of them did divide their paper as you see. We collected 19 papers, and we started analyzing them. And what did we find? Well, we found that University of Ghana students, they primarily want a screen on their robot. They do want some sort of sound and some sort of speech, and a lot of them want movements. Do note that the green here is one that we're absolutely certain that the student wrote this, or the picture that they gave us, and the NA value is that we were uncertain how to group it. And then for embodiment, there's a balance between some people choose abstract, cartoon-like, and what's not. And then for mobility, it's like most of the University of Ghana students want their robot to be mobile. We grouped three categories. We found that there were 4 themes when it comes to the ethical and social concern. The first one is privacy and data. A lot of students mentioned that they don't want their robot to be collecting personal information about them. Some students did mention about if the robot is battery operated or it's like how much electricity will it pull. There is a social impact of it, so students are concerned that if they rely too much on their robots, then they won't be able to figure things out on their own. And then the final theme was, well, students did mention the robotic takeover, so they're still thinking about that. And then finally, we found that even though we did expose students to the state of the art, many of them kept their original design, but they did try to change some small things, such as some students were like, they didn't know a robot doesn't have to be humanoid, it can be machine-like, or the robot doesn't need to always move around to fulfill its purpose as a study robot. So these were small changes that we found that students mentioned. In conclusion, I was able to play with this participatory design method for a short workshop where I was able to understand the culture within Guyana, within university students, with regard to what are their features and social and ethical concerns to design their own personalized study robot. We found that they desired multimodal communication, they had social and ethical issues, and I would like to replicate this study across different cultures so we can really do a cross-culture collaboration. Thank you. I'm open to collaboration and any questions that you may have right now. Thank you.